Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan and thank you for joining me. My guest today is small business owner, Patrick McElgunn. Patrick is one of the owners of Grow Tea Lounge in Midland and a certified business consultant with a small business development center. Welcome, Patrick. I've been actually to the Grove Tea Lounge.
Oh, have you?
Yes,
Okay.
I have. But tell us what it is and how you came to think that was a good idea and even a business.
Sure. Yeah, it can be a little bit of a long story, but ultimately, at the core of it, Grove Tea Lounge really is a tea and coffee shop. Our goal was to really flip the idea of a coffee shop on its head, where most places you go, coffee and espresso are the main focus, and tea has always been an afterthought. And we thought, what happens if we flip it the other way around and make tea the focus? But we also wanted to really make sure that we were creating a space for everybody, and that's where a lot of the food started to come into play, is that no matter whether it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, or anything in between, you could always find something that you wanted, that you needed, that you were looking for. How we really came about coming up with Grove and the concept, it was about 4 years in the making, to be totally honest, and it all just started with an idea of, what if? What if we made a space? What would that look like? What if we made a space that we wanted to be a part of when we were in high school, or in college and dating, or once we were newlyweds, or then at that time now that we have small children? What would that space really look like? And so really Grove is more about the space that it provides people, that people can come and enjoy and use how they want. And the tea and the coffee and the food is really just the medium or the tools that we use to be able to deliver that space to people.
And I experienced that. The environment of the room was just relaxing, and the idea of tea, just said it's sort of qualified space, where you can relax before the next thing. But I noticed that people use it as meeting places, not only socially, but charitable or business causes.
Yeah, I think the space lends itself well to a lot of those uses. Again, thinking through how people might want to use the space and what was already available in town. When we started to build that out and really design the floor plan, we wanted to make sure that if you wanted to come in and put some headphones on and just like sit and hammer out some emails or whatever it might be, that you had a space for that. And we have a bar with plugins and everything you might need. But if you were coming in and you had 3 toddlers with you and you need to be able to sprawl out and keep them busy, but get them something to munch on or something to drink, that you also had a space for that. And we have kind of a nook area with bench seating, but we also have a great comfy couch with 2 more kind of love seat chairs, and a nice area rug where we see kids all the time. They sprawl out, they throw their Legos everywhere, and they build their blocks, and it's a great place for parents with kids to meet, or just to be able to have a space of their own. And then kind of your standard tables for people to be able to eat and drink and just meet with a friend or a couple colleagues.
So how did you choose colors, or what feel were you aiming for?
I'm not allowed to touch the colors. I'm gonna be totally honest.
Okay,
we have my wife and I, along with our good friends Joe and Aaron, who are a husband and wife team as well. The 4 of us are all co-owners in this. And I am very thankful that my wife has an amazing eye for design, and that Joe and Aaron in the same way have that, but much more formally as they each have over 10 years of graphic design and marketing experience under their belt respectively. And so I was more or less the budget guy, and they got to make a lot of the decisions and have the creativity around the color schemes and the layouts and the textures and things like that. But I would say foundationally, because it's a bank, it's an old chemical bank branch. It was built to be a chemical bank branch. It was actually built by the Dow Architectural Studio, which was designed by them. We wanted to really try and incorporate a little bit of history of the bank into that, and also that mid-century modern style that it really lends itself to, while still putting kind of our own personality into it and making it a little bit more modern with a little more modern color scheme and things like that.
How did you develop a business plan?
That is a long process, but I am very thankful that my background, I actually spent 4 years as a certified business consultant for the Small Business Development Center. And in that role, I got to work with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs and small business owners and do deep dives with them on their business here in the Great Lakes Bay region. And that was a service we offered for free, and it was fantastic, and I learned a lot about developing business plans and thinking through the idea from start to finish, and the power in actually taking an idea, from your mind and putting it down onto paper, so you could start to discover maybe the holes and the gaps that you tend to kind of glaze over. And more than anything, I think the financial piece and the projections are the things that scare the most people. And having 4 years of experience looking at those and kind of the margin for error that a lot of people tend to have gave me a lot of really good, helpful, and interesting insight to be able to do it.
To know how much money to raise as well as cash flow over the growth period.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So I noticed you have food there. Good
Yes.
food. What is the role of food in an operation like this?
For us, it plays a pretty significant role. I would say we see about half of our sales come from food.
That's impressive.
Yes. So it's, I'll be honest, it was more than what we thought it was going to be. But what's been really neat is, as much as the tea and the coffee and all the drinks give us a really fun, creative outlet to be able to play around and mess around with things, the food, I feel like, is almost endless in what we can do and the combinations we can put together, even in just that small kitchen that we have. And it's really allowed my wife Shannon and I, we are also, we have a health coaching business where we work with people one-on-one towards establishing health goals and working towards those. And it's really allowed us to bring in some of those concepts as far as healthier food, healthier ideas around food, but also begin to tailor things to people who have a variety of food preferences or allergies even. So we have, in my opinion, I think we have one of the broadest selections under any one roof of foods for people who are gluten-free, who are dairy-free, or any kind of vegan or vegetarian diet.
And who does the cooking?
So Shannon does a lot of the food testing, and she does all the experimenting. So our kitchen in our house tends to be quite the show, and things everywhere, and always doing some different recipe testing. But we actually have a chef in the back who's there full time. His name's Jose, and he can whip out food like it's nobody's business, and he is amazing at it. And so everything that hits your plate or goes from your fork to your mouth is something that Jose made and prepared, and we do that on a daily and a weekly basis.
So how much of a rainy day fund did you have to build in to the proposed budget for things you didn't anticipate you needed to do?
More than what I like to admit. But we tried to estimate roughly about 20% to give ourselves some margins between the project, or the scope of actually starting this grew I think, significantly from what we originally anticipated, because our initial idea and our business plan that we put together had us actually renting a space.
Oh, yes.
And we spent probably close to 2 years looking to really try and find the right space that we felt like gave us the floor plan and kind of the flexibility to do what we wanted. And we just had a couple instances where things at the last minute fell through.
Disappointing.
Yes, it was. But thankfully, it was not anywhere on our radar. But as you know, God would have it and timing would have it, when the last deal that we were working on started to fall through, and we were beginning to recognize that, the bank came on the market and was available. And we took a look at it. We weren't really sure. And we went back about 2 or 3 weeks later, and with kind of a fresh set of eyes, and realized, like, this is the space. Like, we can really make this what we want it to be. And so that really opened up the scope of what our budget needed to be and the amount of capital we were going to need to be able to invest in this to make that work. And with build out, that was a little bit more of a different beast. But yeah, we tend to look at about 20%.
So was that a good amount? I mean, would you have made it more or less?
I am a firm believer that constraints breed creativity.
Yes.
And that sometimes it's better to be creative than it is to have all the capital that you think you need. And so for us, I think it was almost just the right amount. We found down the line that there had to be a little additional investment, just from a cash flow standpoint once we were actually open. But as far as getting us from a blank slate to opening our doors that first day, we were pretty close to being spot on.
And where did you get the money from? Not who from, but what
Sure.
kinds of things?
So we got a equipment loan from the bank. We put in our own finances as well, and then we did borrow money from like friends and family.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. So we kind of pulled a little bit from everything.
Now, you've been with your wife a long time, before marriage, and now you have children.
Yes.
How is your relationship? What was your relationship at the beginning, and now how has it changed or re-emphasized now that you have children and a business and you're older?
Good question. It's been really neat to see it evolve, and I don't know that I'll be able to accurately vocalize how much it's changed, because we started dating our junior year of high school. We were high school sweethearts at Midland High here in town, and went through college together, engagement, marriage, kids, and things like that. And we've gone through a lot of life together through that time. I would say God has blessed us with a consistency in how we, I think, approach each other and treat each other as, I think, a lot as equals. We each see the strengths in each other, and we're also very complementary in each other's strengths and weaknesses and how those play out.
If you have a difference of opinion, what have you learned that works to resolve that decision and keep the relationship engaged?
We've had to adapt our approaches to conflict to better suit, I think, each other and how what engages us and what causes us to shut down. And so that has been one way that our relationship has grown and changed over the years as we go through these different life stages. But at the end of the day, we talk about it. We talk about it, and we talk about it within the day as best we can. I hesitate to say that, like, don't go to bed mad, but we want to make sure that we give each other the space we need to process the differences or the conflict or whatever it is, that the disagreement that we're having. But then for sure, before we go to bed, there is a conversation that happens. Even if we can't fully resolve it, we can at least start to make progress towards that and diffuse that situation so it doesn't sit and fester and just kind of continue to eat away at each of us. And so we really do our best to have a lot of grace with each other, and patience, and some encouragement, and stick to the facts and the I feels, right? This is how I feel. and really begin to express that so that we can understand where each other is coming from.
When you raise your children, and she's sort of grounding, does she take a lot of the decisions and the limits, or what is the role there for you and her?
She handles most of the day-to-day stuff at the house and with the kids, and the amount of things that my wife is able to balance and manage and do well and gracefully just blows me away every single day. And the patience that she has, the loving patience that she has with our kids as well is really neat. As far as kind of parenting and setting limits and boundaries and things like that, we really strive to discuss at least the larger things. How do we want to discipline? What does that look like? At what point do we feel comfortable escalating from just a timeout or a discussion to now they've lost either privileges, whether that's a TV show or some other event that the kids might, a birthday party they may have been invited to, things like that.
You mentioned grace. Is the role of religion part of your lives? Yes,
it's very strong in ours, and again, I'm going to have to defer to Shannon. She was the one who invited me to church in the first place back in high school, right when we started dating. My family and I had attended church for a long time growing up, and then there was a period in my life where I stopped. And then back in high school, she invited me, and I liked her, and we were starting to date. So I was like, sure, I'll go to church with you. That sounds great. And it was a good excuse. And honestly, from then on, it's been a very integral part in everything we do and how we do it, and the mindset, and I think the view that we have of how we approach, I think, our lives in general, how we approach raising our children, how we approach business, and really, everything else. In that, it's our belief is, God has a plan for us, and we know that His plans are good, and that He will take care of us regardless of what trials we might face, and it helps, I think, especially being kind of twofold entrepreneurs, helps take away a little bit of the stress and the scariness of it, because we do have that faith that we lean on and that we stand
on. What are the characteristics of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, you have to have a high risk tolerance, I think. I think be willing and able to roll with the punches, be okay with a little ambiguity, and being able to ask yourself, what's good enough? And I have to remind myself of this a lot, in that it can be very easy as an entrepreneur. You have a vision in your mind of what you want to create, and it can be very hard to, quote unquote, settle for something that feels less than whatever that grand vision is that you have. But at some point, you have to take the first step, and you just have to pull the trigger and execute and begin building that thing, that idea, that business. And so asking yourself, what's good enough? Is 80% good enough? Is 70% good enough? Because otherwise, I've seen it a lot, and I've experienced it myself until I have Joe or Aaron or Shan, speak into me and my thought process and just say, it's gonna be all right. Like, let's just launch it. We'll see what happens, and we'll tweak and we'll figure it out along the way. And that can be, I think, a scary thing and a vulnerable thing. And I think the other characteristic is not necessarily a personal one, but more or less having a strong tribe around you who can, I think, lovingly speak truth into you and encourage you, and of people whose opinions that you value, who understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to build, and can really be a good sounding board.
Did you seek out mentors?
Yes, I did. I'm thankful that I had a broad network of people across the Great Lakes Bay region that I could bounce ideas off of and check and just say, I feel like this is a good idea, but am I totally off base? So I intentionally reached out to a lot of people. Honestly, my mother-in-law, my dad, my mom, those were probably the first three people that we reached out to, and we stayed in constant communication with as we were coming up with this idea, because they all have experience in the coffee kind of food and beverage world, but also in business growth and development, and a lot of the details and the financials behind it.
Oh, that's a blessing.
Yes, it was. So we had, that was, I like to call it our unfair advantage that we had, is we kind of had some of those people built into our lives already.
And they wanted to see you successful and had the time to give to you.
Yes.
Interesting. Now, what is a certified business planner? What do you have to know to be certified?
So there's a week-long, actually it's 2 weeks, that we go through for a lot of training and not only personal development, but business development. And ultimately at the end of that 2-week process, and it's split up, they're roughly about 4 to 6 months apart. And it's hosted internally through the Small Business Development Center, which is where I worked prior to leaving and opening Grove. But it was really a deep dive into every aspect of starting and running and growing a small business, best practices and common pitfalls that we as consultants tend to see clients go through and experience. And it all culminated in actually us having to develop our own business idea and write a full-blown business plan with 3 years of financial projections, and actually then take that and have it reviewed by our peers, and looked at by some different commercial lenders that our organization knew that they would kind of pass.
How could you make a business plan for a tea lounge when, coffee shops are well done? Do you take that as a model, or do you have to, it's a guess.
It is. And at the end of the day, no matter how tried and true a business idea or a theme or whatever, even if it's just a coffee shop is, every new one that opens up is going to be completely different. There are some industry standards that you can look at, but when we were looking at the tea lounge side of things, we said, well, what do we most like? And it goes back to that idea of what's good enough.
Yes.
And good enough was coffee shops. And so we started there with pulling different industry data and projections from like IBIS World and a few other reports, and kind of looking around locally as far as what are the things that the community already supports in those coffee shops, and start to, you almost kind of circle the drain. You start to piece all the things together around the outskirts, and you go, okay, how do all of these things start to intersect in the vision that I have for what we want to make?
They say that location is very important. Is that the ideal location for a tea lounge, or are there others? You're near Dow, but not necessarily near other aspects of town.
Sure. There are. A lot of times it's not necessarily sometimes it can be a specific part of town, but other things that we looked at was traffic patterns and traffic flow. How many cars in an average day or week or month pass by our location? And we've got in Midland a fantastic transportation department and engineering department that are very good at keeping current data on all of those things. So it made it really easy for us to look at those. I would tell you that most people thought we were crazy to go into that location. It's not on a main road. It's tucked back in a neighborhood. Sure, we have Dow right there across the street, but very little, as far as most people think, very little traffic passing by. But we have 3 apartment complexes and an amazing group of people who, own their homes or rent their homes within a block of us. We have Midland High School a block away. So we're not necessarily something that people are going to pass by, like on Eastman Road or in Saginaw, where it's a lot more traffic heavy. But I think for what we've created in the space that we want to bring to people, I don't think we could ask for a better space. It does require that we be a little more proactive in making sure people know that we exist and remember that we're there.
Which is the most effective? Is it social media or putting up a little piece of paper on a bulletin board somewhere?
Social media has been very kind to us. It has worked really, really well. It helps us spread the word very quickly about the things that we do and how we do it, and show people really what our space can look like and the personality of our staff and of Grove itself. But I think there's a time and a place for each type, and it's how they all work together. But a lot of it too is just going out and being a part of the community.
How do you do that?
People. A lot of it, I personally am involved in a lot of things through the Midland Business Alliance, so our Chamber of Commerce, and then different organizations and participating in events. And sometimes it's also for us supporting a variety of like fundraisers and nonprofits through some donations and things like that.
Well, thank you, Patrick. That
Thank
was
you so
really
much.
wonderful. So we've I have learned a great deal, and one is being a perfectionist myself. Is it good enough? And should you start there or exceed it or not? At what point should you go? There are other things that he's very good at with his team. I like that he married well, in the sense that they're complementary personalities, and they learn how to talk things out, also very important. And while we didn't get into it, I think working with another couple has its own opportunities but also challenges, as kids do. I like the idea, not necessarily articulated, but that he domiciled, not necessarily by choice, his lounge or their lounge, where there was a lot of neighborhood feel, the school, the residences, and I think that his personality of persistence and deep research and making him known, being very likable is a big help, right? Anywhere,
Absolutely.
with employees. Anyway, so every time I say, please go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know. Be generous, do it every day. They need it and you need it. So I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Patrick, for making time in your very busy life and day.
So I appreciate you very much.
As a customer, now that I know him, I feel so much better. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonsthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.